I, 29F, didn't always go by Eleanor Black. 3 years ago, I was just Lena Hart, an optimistic, wide-eyed assistant trying to make a name for herself at Kingston & Vale, one of the top design firms in the city. I worked insane hours. I brewed coffee I couldn't afford to drink and organized schedules down to the second, all to impress Ethan Vale, 32M, the CEO's son. He was brilliant, confident, magnetic, and very good at pretending I was special. We started as co-workers. Then he asked me out, charming, casual, just a walk to the deli across the street. Before long, I was waking up in his penthouse on Sundays, still half-dressed in his t-shirt. He said I grounded him. I believed him. God, I was so stupid. He kept me hidden from his father. I assumed it was because of our office dynamic. I didn't question it when he told me not to make a scene at work or get too close to other executives. I thought I understood him. I thought I was building something. But what I was really building was his alibi. One night, I stayed late to finish a pitch deck for a high-stakes luxury hotel project. He was in the boardroom with his dad and some investors. I dropped off the printouts, didn't even knock, and that's when I heard it. I'm telling you, she's nothing. Just a tool. She does all the back-end work and thinks she's important. She won't be here long anyway. That voice. Ethan's voice. Laughter followed. His father. The investors. One even made a joke about replacing her with AI. I stood there, frozen. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked slowly, like thin ice under too much weight. I didn't confront him. I walked out, grabbed my bag, and left. He called me later, asking where I went, pretending nothing happened. I blocked him. Quit the next day. And then, I disappeared. Here's what Ethan didn't know: my name isn't really Lena Hart. Not entirely. My mother was once married to Andrew Vale, Ethan's father. She left when I was a baby, taking me with her and severing all contact. I grew up with her last name, and she never talked about her past, until cancer made her start writing things down. I inherited more than just her journals. I inherited her shares in Kingston & Vale. The silent kind. The kind Ethan and his father forgot existed because they thought my mother died broke and bitter. When I left the company, I went back to the lawyers. I changed my name. I took courses. I disappeared from social media. I spent the last 3 years building my portfolio, my identity, and my presence in the industry, all under Eleanor Black. And 2 months ago, I bought out another investor's stake. I now own 32% of Kingston & Vale. Next week, I'm attending their executive summit. They have no idea who I am. They don't recognize my name, my face, or the way I've changed. But I remember everything. And I didn't come back for closure. I came back to burn it all down. It started the second I stepped into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers. Champagne flutes clinking. Soft jazz murmuring beneath the quiet hum of calculated networking. The Kingston & Vale Executive Summit was an elegant circus, and I was walking into it as a lion among clowns. My heels echoed against the marble floor as I entered. My hair was darker now, styled sharp. My body language? Unrecognizable. The girl who once stammered around board members was gone. Eleanor Black walked with the weight of secrets and shares. And there he was. Ethan Vale. Still wearing that confident smirk, surrounded by junior partners desperate for his approval. His tailored suit said success, but I knew the man beneath it was built from manipulation and charm. I waited to catch his eye. I didn't need to say anything, not yet. He looked at me. Paused. Tilted his head slightly, the way he used to when he couldn't place a face. Nothing. He didn't recognize me. He approached with a glass of scotch in his hand and said, "You must be one of the new investors." I smiled. You could say that. The boardroom smelled like mahogany and money. 10 chairs. 9 filled with men who had no idea the balance of power was about to shift. Ethan's father, Andrew Vale, sat at the head of the table, presiding over the room like a king too tired to admit he was old. They introduced me as Ms. Black, a new stakeholder with a growing influence in the luxury development sector. I watched Ethan from the corner of my eye. He was leaning back in his seat, bored, until I started talking. I outlined a detailed plan to reposition their upcoming resort project to appeal to elite digital nomads. I referenced market shifts, environmental design, and ROI projections with precision. Every word was a scalpel. Every slide was a wound opening. Ethan leaned forward slowly. "You seem familiar. Have we met before?" I locked eyes with him and said, "Not in any way that mattered." The room went silent for a moment, then Andrew chuckled, breaking the tension. Sharp. I like her already. Oh, Andrew. You liked my mother once, too. Until you discarded her. Just like your son discarded me. Later that night, during the cocktail hour, Ethan found me alone on the balcony. I can't shake this feeling, he said, staring out over the skyline. Like I should know you. I sipped my drink and said nothing. You remind me of someone. Someone I hurt. But I guess that could be half the women I've dated. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. He turned toward me. Did I hurt you? A part of me wanted to scream yes. To throw every memory back at his smug face. But instead, I leaned in and whispered. Not yet. Then I walked away. Let me tell you something about revenge. It's not about rage. It's not about chaos. It's about control. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the long game. I had private meetings with the CFO and chief strategist. I casually mentioned redundancies in Ethan's latest expansion plan. I pointed out how the firm's image was too tied to a single face, his face, and that a shift in leadership could bring a fresh narrative. Quiet seeds. Planted carefully. And then I leaked something to the board, a proposal Ethan had stolen from a junior associate and passed off as his own. The associate? A young woman named Callie. She reminded me of who I used to be. When the board reviewed the proposal trail, the metadata didn't lie. And neither did Callie, once they asked her directly. Suddenly, Ethan's pedestal started to wobble. The real fun began when I offered to sponsor the firm's rebranding initiative, in exchange for an executive seat and final approval on creative direction. Andrew resisted at first. But my shares spoke louder than his pride. And so, it was announced, Eleanor Black to join Kingston and Vale executive leadership team. I wish I could show you Ethan's face when the press release went out. The same man who once said I was just a tool was now reporting to me in meetings. He didn't recognize the girl he used to belittle. He couldn't. Because I'd buried her. But I wasn't finished. Not until I broke him the way he broke me. There's a moment, just before a man's world crumbles, where his face shows the rawest kind of fear. That split second when the puzzle pieces click together. When everything he thought was real shatters. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. And it happened on the night of the Foundation Gala. The Kingston and Vale Foundation Gala was an annual masquerade, equal parts philanthropy, performance, and power play. Everyone who was anyone attended in black tie and thinly veiled secrets. Masks were optional, but irony wasn't. I wore a custom midnight blue gown. Not flashy. Not demure. Just commanding. The mask I chose didn't hide my identity. It framed it. Tonight, I didn't want to disappear. I wanted him to see me. Ethan arrived fashionably late, as always. But this time he wasn't the star. That spotlight belonged to me. Because this year, the keynote speech wasn't given by Andrew Vale. It was given by me, Eleanor Black, newly appointed executive and anonymous major donor. My name is Eleanor Black, I began, my voice carrying across the grand ballroom. And like many of you, I once believed that legacy was inherited, not earned. But tonight, I want to talk about the legacy we leave behind when no one is watching. I spoke of resilience. Of betrayal. Of building something from ashes. Each word was a thread, weaving a tapestry of carefully disguised truth. Ethan watched from the crowd, his glass frozen in midair. He was starting to remember. Not everything. But enough. I saw it, that flicker of doubt, the beginning of recognition. And then I locked eyes with him as I said. And some legacies aren't written by bloodlines. They're written by the people they tried to erase. The room applauded. But Ethan didn't move. He just stared, as if I'd yanked the curtain off a nightmare he'd long forgotten. After the speech, he found me. You, he said, breathless. You're not, you can't be. I tilted my head. Can't be who? Elle. The name hit like a slap. Nobody called me Elle anymore. Not since him. Not since he destroyed the life we were supposed to build together. Let me take you back. 7 years ago, I was a junior analyst with stars in my eyes. I worked late. I skipped meals. I loved my job. And I loved him. Ethan was my mentor. My protector. My secret. He said he couldn't go public with our relationship because of optics. Said the board would frown on him dating someone from a lower level. I believed him. For 2 years, I supported his career. Helped him write reports. Covered for his mistakes. And then I discovered the truth. There were others. Not just one. Multiple. Some who knew. Some who didn't. And one who was pregnant. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "You were always temporary, Elle. Don't make this messy." Messy. Like I was a stain on his polished image. The next day, I was fired. The reason? Unauthorized access to confidential files. He'd framed me just to protect his reputation. I lost everything. My job. My credibility. My future. But he didn't realize he'd created a storm. I spent the next 5 years rebuilding. Under a new name. In new cities. With people who believed in me. I launched my own investment group. Quietly acquired failing resorts. Turned them into high-performing assets. Made millions in the shadows while Ethan posed on magazine covers. Until one day, I saw a headline. Vale Group announces new luxury project, The Haven. The Haven. It was a copy of my idea. The one I'd pitched years ago. The same one he'd laughed at. I bought a stake in the development under a shell company. Then I bought more. Until I controlled 40% of the board. And that's when I stepped out of the shadows as Eleanor Black. Back to the gala. "You ruined me," he whispered. "Why?" I stared at him, cold. "You ruined me. I just made sure you didn't get away with it." He looked around, eyes wild. "Is this some kind of setup? You planned all this? I rebuilt my life. You just happened to be standing in the way of my success. You're lying." "No, Ethan," I said, stepping closer. "You're just finally dealing with a woman who doesn't need your permission to win." He reached for my wrist. Not rough desperate. But I pulled back and said, "Don't touch me. Not now. Not ever again." That night, the board voted to freeze his authority pending an internal ethics investigation. The CFO and HR director both submitted documentation. The stolen proposal. The falsified termination report. The leaked messages. Everything I had gathered. All of it timed perfectly. By midnight, Ethan Vale was suspended. By morning, headlines read, "Vale heir under fire, sexual misconduct and corporate sabotage allegations emerge." And me. I had already left the city. I watched the fallout from a quiet villa in Santorini, sipping espresso, as the ocean wind tousled my hair. Some might ask, was it worth it? Every single second. But don't mistake this for a love story gone wrong. This wasn't heartbreak. This was rebirth. Ethan Vale's empire was crumbling. And I wasn't just watching it fall. I was standing at the top of it, holding the matchbook. But revenge stories don't end with one man's ruin. Not when the roots go deeper than love. Not when secrets were buried long before I ever met him. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. This was about my mother. And the legacy I was never supposed to inherit. After the gala, I disappeared. Not physically. I made a few public appearances, gave neutral interviews, spoke in rehearsed tones. But emotionally, I was gone. Because I knew I had one more move left. One more piece that would complete the puzzle. And it was sitting in a locked drawer inside Vale Group's private archive, a place few ever dared to go. I didn't need to break in. I had earned my way in. The key came from a woman named Diana Mercer, Vale's former VP of Legal Affairs. She'd quietly reached out after the scandal broke. A plain envelope. No return address. Just a note that said, she deserved better. D. Inside was a USB drive. And a keycard. The files contained audio logs, NDA copies, scanned letters. And a name I hadn't seen in years. Marina Black. My mother. I grew up believing my mom was a hotel maid who died of cancer before I turned 15. What I didn't know, what she never told me, was that she once worked directly for the Vale family. She wasn't just a cleaner. She was Andrew Vale's personal assistant. And according to Diana's notes, his former lover. There were whispers. Accusations. A pregnancy. A payoff. Everything disappeared overnight. Marina vanished. Changed her name. Raised me alone. Never spoke of it. But Diana had kept the files. Out of guilt. Or fear. Maybe both. I confronted Diana over a coffee in a quiet bistro in DC. "You knew," I said. "All this time." "I didn't know it was you," she replied. "Until I saw your speech at the gala. You look exactly like her. But stronger. She's dead." "I know." She slid a photo across the table. It was old. Blurred. But clear enough. My mother younger, glowing, standing beside Andrew Vale. Pregnant. Smiling. Hopeful. And then it clicked. That's why they erased her. Because I wasn't just Ethan's ex. I was the illegitimate daughter of Andrew Vale. And that meant I wasn't a stranger crashing their empire. I was family. The one they tried to erase. The next board meeting was unlike any before. Ethan had been removed. The Vale family was scrambling to maintain control. Investors were pulling out. Stocks were slipping. Scandals were multiplying. They expected the storm to pass. But I wasn't done yet. I entered the room in a charcoal suit, holding a thick folder in my hand. "This is a claim of rightful inheritance," I said, sliding the documents across the table. "What are you playing at?" snapped Valerie Vale, Andrew's sister. I looked her dead in the eye. "My name is Eleanor Black. My mother's name was Marina Black. Formerly Marina Gray. She worked for your brother for 4 years. These documents include paternity test results, concealed settlements, and legally binding letters of acknowledgement." Gasps. Murmurs. Silence. "You're lying," Valerie hissed. "That woman was buried. Forgotten. And pregnant with his child when he sent her away. Legal action was inevitable. But I had already consulted the best. DNA confirmation sealed it. The timing of the payoff. Andrew Vale's old journals, some of which Diana had found and returned anonymously to the firm's archives. I wasn't here for money. I wasn't here for petty revenge. I wanted the board seat that should have been mine. The Vale legacy wasn't built by honor. It was built by shadows. And I was done hiding in them. Weeks passed. Headlines shifted. Lawsuits unfolded. And one day, I stood on the rooftop of the Haven, the very resort Ethan once mocked me for dreaming up. Now it was mine. Every inch of it. Every stone and key and star in the sky above it. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't vengeful. I was free. But let me tell you the truth. I didn't do all this just to ruin Ethan. I did it to rewrite a story that had been forced on me since birth. A story where women like my mother were used and discarded. Where powerful men erased the inconvenient women they couldn't control. Where daughters were taught to shrink. Not me. Not anymore. A year later, Ethan tried to reach out. A letter. Handwritten. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to say, "I see you now. I wish I had seen you then. I'm sorry. For all of it." I never replied. Some people don't deserve closure. As for me, I rebranded Vale Group into Blackwell International, a name that meant legacy, power, and rebirth. I established a foundation in my mother's name. Built scholarships for single mothers. Hired women who had been shut out by corporate politics. The world remembered Ethan's fall. But they would remember Eleanor Black's rise even longer. Because I didn't win by being lucky. I won because I chose not to stay broken. And that is a story they'll never silence again.